Have you ever felt the silence that comes after a storm? Now imagine a silence that is the storm. That's what happens when two words, sharp as broken glass, cut through the air of a workshop and slice your soul. Dead weight. They were spoken. And suddenly, the comforting hum of the machines falls silent. The heat of the welding iron in your hand seems distant. The only sound left is your own breathing, stuck in your throat. The only feeling is that of drowning on dry land. Before we continue, tell me which city you are watching us from. I want to feel that we are together on this journey. The story you are about to hear is about a young man named Arthur, who was discarded as a useless burden, until the day he showed everyone that sometimes the weight others place on you is exactly what you need to become unbeatable. Subscribe to the channel now, because Arthur's journey is proof that the greatest revolutions begin in silence. Arthur's outburst was not accompanied by shouting. There were no doors slamming. His outburst was a silent ceremony of destruction. Scattered across the floor of his bedroom were the designs, diagrams, and blueprints for Ares, the robot he was building with his team for the National Engineering Competition. For Arthur, those papers weren't just drawings. They were conversations. Each line was a word, each angle a sentence. It was there, in the universal language of math and physics, that he communicated perfectly. He saw beauty in a well-balanced system of gears, poetry in clean, efficient code. He remembered spending 3 days straight just designing the robot's chassis, ensuring a perfectly low center of gravity for maximum stability. Victor, the team leader, and the others, like Liam, grew impatient. Arthur, stop wasting time on that. We need to assemble the arm, that's what gets us points. Arthur tried to explain that a powerful arm on an unstable base was useless, but his words came out in an order that his logical mind understood, but their impatience couldn't process. He was meticulous, and they mistook his meticulousness for slowness. The execution took place in the workshop. Victor, with the silent support of the others, stood in front of him. Arthur, we talked. Your pace doesn't work for the team. You're dead weight. We're taking you off the project. Dead weight. The expression hung in the air. Arthur didn't argue. He just put away his tools one by one, cleaned his workbench, and went home. Now, in his room, he stared at the diagrams that represented hours of his life, of his passion, and then, with frightening calm, he began to tear them up, one by one, not with anger, but with surgical precision. Each tear was a farewell. He wasn't just destroying paper. He was trying to tear from himself the pain of having his greatest strength, his analytical mind, seen as his greatest weakness. If the world didn't understand his language, maybe it was better to remain silent forever. Clara, Arthur's mother, was a woman who faced the world with the silent strength of a mountain. But when she saw the remains of the diagrams in the trash and the empty look in her son's eyes, she felt the earth shake beneath her feet. She would not accept this. The next day, she was in the office of the project supervisor, Mr. Valerio. She didn't go there to yell. She went there to seek justice. Mr. Valerio, a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders and a pile of paperwork on his desk, listened to her with the patience of someone who had heard it all before. Mrs. Faraz, he began, his voice soft. I understand your frustration. Victor and the boys came to see me yesterday. They explained that there were creative differences. Creative differences? Clara retorted, her calm beginning to fade. They called my son dead weight and kicked him off the team weeks before the competition. That's not a creative difference, it's cruelty. It's exclusion. False hope arrived in the form of a sham mediation. Mr. Valerio promised to intervene. That intervention was a 5-minute conversation with Arthur in the school hallway. Look, Arthur, the teacher said, placing his hand on his shoulder in a paternalistic manner. I know you're a bright kid, but on a team everyone has to row in the same direction. Sometimes you have to give in a little, be more flexible. How about you talk to Victor, apologize for any friction, and try to rejoin the team? The suggestion fell like a ton of bricks on Clara, who was watching from afar. Apologize? Apologize for being methodical? Apologize for being humiliated? The message was clear. The institution was not there to protect vulnerable students, but to maintain superficial peace. It was easier to ask the victim to bow down than to confront the arrogance of the aggressors. They didn't offer a solution. They offered surrender. Clara took her son's hand and led him away. her hope of finding a shred of common sense at that school crumbling to dust. Mr. Valeria wasn't a bad man. He was a tired man, a former engineer who became a teacher dreaming of inspiring the next generation, but who ended up becoming a project manager and appeaser of influential parents. He knew Arthur had a special talent, but he also knew that Victor's father, the team leader, was one of the school's biggest donors. Confronting Victor meant creating a problem he didn't have the energy to deal with, so he hid behind the rules and the need for team harmony, sacrificing a student to maintain his own comfort and institutional peace. Victor, meanwhile, operated under overwhelming pressure. His father, a renowned engineer who had won the same competition in his youth, saw his son's success as an extension of his own legacy. "Don't embarrass me, Victor," was the phrase he heard most often. Arthur's meticulousness, his refusal to cut corners was, for Victor, a terrifying risk. Every day Arthur spent refining the chassis was one less day to program the arm that would impress the judges and, more importantly, his father. Victor's cruelty was not born of hatred, but of deep panic. By expelling Arthur, he was not getting rid of a colleague. He was desperately trying to rid himself of the possibility of failure. The most painful conflict, however, was taking place in Arthur's living room. Clara, his mother, was at a crossroads. Part of her wanted to wrap Arthur in a protective cocoon, take him out of school, forget about the competition, and never look back. "Enough, my son," she said, her heart broken. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Let's just drop it." But another part of her, the part that saw the spark of genius in her son's eyes, refused to let that flame be extinguished. She knew that giving up would be confirming the label. It would teach Arthur that when the world pushes him down, he should fall, and this internal battle, between the desire to protect and the need to empower, kept her awake at night, while Arthur, the epicenter of this storm, remained in an indecipherable silence. The change didn't come from a scream but from a creak, the creak of the door to the old garage at the back of the house, a place that belonged to Arthur's grandfather, a watchmaker who taught him a love of precision mechanics. For days Arthur avoided the place, but that night, something pulled him inside. The smell of oil and old wood enveloped him. On a workbench covered with a sheet was his grandfather's unfinished project, an old electric motor, sturdy and heavy. He didn't have a plan. He just started cleaning the motor, removing years of dust and rust. His hands moved with a memory of their own, and as he cleaned, his mind cleared. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want to prove Victor wrong. He wanted something deeper. He wanted to build something that was honest, stable, strong, something that was him. With the motor as the centerpiece, an idea began to form, a crazy idea. He grabbed his laptop, went to the competition website, and with his heart pounding, downloaded the 200-page rulebook. He read every line, every paragraph, and then he found it. Clause 3, Section 2. Teams must consist of 1 to 4 members. 1. No one ever competed alone. It was considered impossible, but the rule allowed it. At that moment the tide turned. He would not be the victim. He would be the loophole in the rule. He looked at his grandfather's heavy engine. A weight. A dead weight, perhaps, for a modern, lightweight design, but it was a weight that meant power, stability, a legacy. He took a new notebook and began to draw. A robot, unlike any other. Low, compact, almost like a tank with his grandfather's engine at its heart. He was no longer rebuilding the Ares. He was bringing the Phoenix to life, a mythological being reborn from its own ashes, stronger than before. The garage was no longer a refuge. It was a nest. Building the Phoenix was a lonely journey, marked by small victories that shone like supernovas in the darkness of the garage. The first victory was the sweetest sound Arthur had ever heard, the hum of his grandfather's old engine coming back to life. After 2 days of meticulous work, replacing worn brushes and rewiring coils, he connected a battery and the engine turned, strong and steady. It was the heart of his robot, and it was beating. The second victory came from an unexpected place. He needed high-precision ball bearings, which were expensive. He went to a small hardware store in the neighborhood run by a man named Afonso, a man of few words and calloused hands. Afonso saw him drawing his plans in a corner of the store. He didn't ask any questions, just watched. When Arthur went to pay for the bearings, Afonso looked at the drawings, looked at the boy and said, "A boy who builds things on his own deserves a discount. Take them. The house is paying." That small act of faith from a stranger was worth more than any sponsorship. The third and most crucial victory was a breakthrough in design. The tournament challenge involved manipulating objects of various shapes and weights. The Ares team was building a complex and heavy claw. Arthur, limited by his resources, created something different, an arm with a combined electromagnet and vacuum suction system. It was lighter, more versatile, and consumed less energy. While others relied on brute force, he relied on intelligence and adaptation. He tested the system with a marble and then with a brick. It worked perfectly for both. He had no one to celebrate with, but he looked at his robot and smiled. They were ready. As he programmed the Phoenix's movements late into the night, Arthur reflected on the label they had given him. Dead weight. The expression had haunted him for days, but now, under the cold light of the garage lamp, it began to transform. In naval engineering, ballast, essentially dead weight, is what prevents a ship from capsizing in a storm. In aviation, counterweight ensures the balance of control surfaces. What Victor and the others saw as a burden, his need to plan, to test, to build a solid foundation before anything else, was not a flaw. It was his ballast. It was what gave him stability. The Ares team, with its haste and focus on flashy features, was a ship without ballast, fast in calm waters, but dangerously unstable in the face of any unexpected challenge. He realized that the world seemed to celebrate speed above all else. Quick answers, quick solutions, quick success. His mind didn't work that way. It worked like his grandfather's, the watchmaker. He understood that for something to work reliably and last, every part, no matter how small, had to be in the right place at the right time. Haste was the enemy of perfection, and perfection was the form of beauty he admired most. Phoenix, his robot, was the embodiment of that philosophy. He wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the flashiest, but he was sturdy, he was reliable, he was fail-safe. And Arthur finally understood that he was like that too. He wasn't dead weight. He was the center of gravity, the silent force that ensures that when the storm comes, the structure won't collapse. And he could feel the storm coming. The competition hall was a cauldron of sound and light. High-tech robots, sponsor banners, and uniformed teams were everywhere. Ares, from Arthur's old team, was one of the stars, an imposing and aggressive machine. And then Arthur entered, pushing his robot on a simple cart. The Phoenix, low, compact, and patched up, looked like a mutt at a dog show. Laughter was inevitable. Victor saw him and gave Liam a smug smile, who, for a moment, looked uncomfortable. Arthur ignored it all. He went to his workstation, the only one with a single member. He didn't seem nervous. He looked at home. The initial rounds tested speed and strength, and Phoenix performed modestly, ranking in the middle, while Ares dominated. Victor barely glanced in Arthur's direction. The final, however, was different. The challenge was called the Surgeon's Maze. The robots had to navigate a narrow path, pick up 3 fragile objects of different shapes, and place them on a small pedestal on the other side, all on a platform that tilted slightly every 30 seconds. It was a test of precision, stability, and adaptation. Ares went first. Victor was brimming with confidence. The robot entered the maze at speed, but when the platform tilted for the first time, its high base caused it to sway. The powerful claw, designed for strength, crushed the first object. Panic flashed in Victor's eyes. He tried to speed up to compensate, but on the second tilt, the robot lost its balance and hit the wall, locking one of its wheels. It was out. Then it was Phoenix's turn. Arthur placed it in the arena. The robot entered the maze, slow and steady. When the platform tilted, its low center of gravity kept it almost motionless. The crowd, expecting another failure, fell silent. Arthur's multifunctional arm adapted perfectly to each object. The electromagnet for the metal piece, the suction for the glass sphere. It moved unhurriedly, with the precision of a watchmaker. It placed the last object on the pedestal a second before time ran out. For a moment, there was absolute silence. And then, the sound. An ovation that started with the judges and spread throughout the pavilion like a wave. People stood, applauding not only the victory, but the genius and tenacity they had. Witnessed. Victor stood frozen, staring at his broken robot. The mask of arrogance finally cracked. Clara, in the stands, cried silently. Arthur looked at his little victorious robot. He felt no euphoria, no pleasure at revenge. He felt a deep calm, the quiet satisfaction of a craftsman who sees his work function perfectly. He looked up and met Liam's gaze across the arena. His former colleague did not smile, just nodded. A small gesture, but one laden with newfound respect. And for Arthur, that silent nod was worth more than the trophy he was about to receive. Don't be afraid of your own weight. In this world, many will call you a burden, simply because they cannot understand your strength. Remember, a foundation is not fast, it is not flashy, but it is the only thing that prevents everything else from falling apart. If Arthur's journey has shown you the strength that lies in authenticity, leave your mark. Like, comment, share this story, and subscribe to the channel, because there are many silent architects out there building the future in their garages. Someone, somewhere, may need to be reminded today that they are not a dead weight, but the cornerstone of their own life.